welcome to the Michigan College Earth Day 50.5. If you are joining us for the first time today, welcome. If you're popping back in after viewing another session during the day, welcome back. We are presented by the Michigan Campus Sustainability Collective, which is a working group of Michigan Sustainable Business Forum. Thank you all very much for being here. This session is looking for a career in a sustainability business or sustainably minded business. Our moderator today is Gail DeBruin, and she is the Professor and Chief Sustainability Officer at Kendall College of Art and Design. And our panelists include Aiman Shahpurwala, who is a data analyst, with Washington Water Trust. Andrew Adamski, who is a farmer with Full Circle Community Farm, and Matt VanSweden, who's the Director of Consulting with Catalyst Partners. Gail, I will let you take it away.
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for a wonderful day of great information. I have the pleasure of moderating this panel, and they have been a little had previews to the questions, so hopefully they're prepared. I'm going to begin by asking the first question, which is, what led you to a career in a sustainability field, and what was your path to getting here? And I have no preference in who might go first. Is there a volunteer amongst you? Aiman, would you like to go first?
Sure, I can go first. Yeah, so I had to answer this question actually in quite a few interviews, so this is bringing me back. So I learned about climate change, I think, when I was young in high school, and I became really curious about the context of why human-induced climate change might impact the Earth. So I was really interested in the science and history of the Earth. And so when I arrived to Michigan State University, I explored a few different majors before finally settling on geological sciences to satisfy my curiosity. And then after I graduated, I spent about a year working in research labs for Michigan State University. And in my spare time, I attended a training, which is where I met my former boss, who is now currently the environmental manager of the Saginaw Chippewa Indian tribe and their environmental team. And so she told me that they might have a job available and that I should come out and volunteer for a day. And so I ended up spending 2 years there after that. And during this time, I became really interested and impressed with how GIS and Earth observation is being used in environmental work, and was very curious on how I could analyze environmental patterns over space and time. So I decided it was time for me to go back and do my master's. I took a year off working part-time, took time to take the GRE and apply for grad school and travel abroad. I found a graduate program abroad in Europe, which was really great, a well-known school called the University of Twente in the Netherlands for GIS and Earth observation, specifically for natural resource management. So I ended up doing this international dual degree program where I spent 1 year in the Netherlands at the University of Twente and 1 year in Lund University in Sweden. And I completed my master's thesis there. So then after I completed my thesis, I moved back to Michigan, where I began my job search and fortunately landed a job as a data analyst for the Washington Water Trust. And I moved to Seattle, and I've been here for 4 months now, and I really love it here. So that's
wonderful. Is it raining there like it is here in Michigan right now?
Actually, it's quite sunny. Yeah.
Well, we've had plenty of your rain lately, so please feel free to bring us back our sun. Well, thank you and welcome for joining us today. We're really glad to have you, and that's a beautiful journey and a lovely introduction to who you are and what you've been doing. Adam, would you share your story?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for inviting us all to be here, and I'm glad that so many people are interested in getting involved in some sustainable careers. So my background, I grew up as a farmer. We were organic dairy farmers here in Wisconsin. My parents were some of the first organic valley milk producers back in the early 80s. Started really getting into it in the 90s. I was born in 93, so didn't start really milking until I was like 7. So from a young age, I was out there seeing how cows and chickens and pigs and all that stuff interact with the land. And I never really took it to heart what we were doing. It always seemed just so mundane, like, oh, come on, I got to do the chores again. And it just never really sunk in until I started going to school for my ecology and sustainability degree at Northern Michigan University, where I was lucky to have some amazing instructors that really brought these environmental issues that I knew about, but never really put 2 and 2 together that, you know, like there's actually stuff you can do about it. And I came home one Thanksgiving and saw just all the fields around the farm where they're usually just planting corn and soybeans were totally fallow, bare ground, and they were applying liquid manure, which there's a lot of dairies around here as there are in Michigan. So like one cow makes enough poop for 50 people. So you have to go somewhere with that. And what they do is they dilute it with potable water, put it into the ground, and then hope that it stays there. And it was just bizarre to me. And it finally clicked how we're kind of abusing potable water in the Midwest, where it's got to be such a glut of resources for us to use it so carelessly. And I just saw how not having the cover on the soil would allow all that manure to run right back into the water supply and contaminate it for everyone else. And that really pushed me to continue my education and finish off my master's degree up there at Northern Michigan, where I studied soil microbial ecology, looking specifically at how different organic fertilizers can be utilized in an urban farming situation to basically take, you know the UP, like you have 50 days to grow, right? So any advantage that you can get is worth it. So using these organic fertilizers, we were able to grow sweet corn, zucchini, and black beans in a basically beach sand. It was right next to Lake Superior. It was a dump that had been used by the university for 30, 40 years. And there was ragweed was having trouble growing there. So seeing just how effective we can be in rejuvenating the land and utilizing these almost waste spaces really motivated me to think more about how we can interact with not just like there's myriad ways that you can get involved in sustainability, but farming for me was easy, I guess, because I had the background, but then studying how to do it in a more intense way really gave me the starting point where I could jump off and start really getting it into the, like they say, getting into the weeds of how to grow way more food on smaller amounts of land at higher nutritional density and quality for all of us, not just for us, but for the environment around us. So it kind of came full circle and really settled me back here. And now I'm trying to bring awareness that, you know, farming is a really viable career option for young people, but it's more than just farming. Us farmers need as much help as we can get and as much interactions and relationships with anyone else concerned about the environment. We can all play our part, be a part of it.
Well, we appreciate what you do every time we have a meal. So thank you very much. I appreciated in your bio that you, and I agree, that there is no distinct sustainability field. Any job we have requires a sustainability mindset. So if we think in a whole systems way, whatever we do in the world, we should have that kind of mindset. And that's a beautiful transition to Matt VanSweden, who is Director of Consulting at Catalyst Partners and recognizes himself as a restorative design consultant. I think that's a beautiful title. So Matt, would you like to share a little bit about how you have arrived at your current place in the world?
I would love to, Gail. Thanks for the
Sure.
introduction and the opportunity to be here. You know, in design school, we have this very clever graphic. I don't know where it originated, but I should probably know this. But it's a really kind of a mess of a squiggly line, and it's about the process. But it's really trying to articulate how messy the process is to get to like a design solution. And I kind of apply that over my own life and feel like, you know, my process to where I am kind of followed that and mimicked that graphic quite well. It for sure wasn't a straight path. I didn't have this epiphany when I was younger of what I wanted to be or who I wanted to be when I grew up. It was just a lot of it was what I like to refer to as just dumb luck of being in the right place at the right time. You know, I started my professional career at an architectural firm, Integrated Architecture here in Grand Rapids. And at the time, I was just an entry-level position doing computer-aided design work for their practice. And there was nothing, like I didn't even know what sustainability was. And this was in 2004-ish. I just knew I needed to, you know, the reason why I started my professional career is that life in retail wasn't suited for young kids and family life. And I had found myself, I didn't really find myself, I was very aware of the process and how it happened, but found myself married and expecting a little boy and knew that I needed to make a transition. And so I kind of relied back on some experience I had in high school with architecture, and I applied at this firm, and they hired me not to do anything but to draw on a computer for 8 hours a day, right? But my drive to kind of be the best person and the best employee I could just led to a focus in passion for the work and for the profession. And when leads started cropping up in RFPs and the firm started doing more and more LEED certified projects, there was an opportunity to explore and discover the ways in which the architectural profession is impacting global issues, specifically climate change. And that, being a very curious individual, I was curious about what that meant, what I could learn about that. And so I just started doing a lot of self-education, learning lots of books, trying to create spaces to intersect with folks like Gail, to learn from peers that are in the space doing this work. And there wasn't really anybody at the firm who was specialized in kind of that third-party certification work. And so I kind of latched onto that as a way of, you know, call it what you will, but it was pretty selfish. I wanted a job, and that felt for me like a good market differentiator. And so a lot of my journey to where I am now is kind of originated in that space of just being curious about the impacts of architecture on the world, on humans, a deep kind of curiosity about the interrelationships, intersections. You know, farming is predates architecture, but not by much. And so we've been informed and impacted by buildings for thousands of years. And just kind of following that path of curiosity led me to, you know, Kendall College of Art and Design, where I was offered a scholarship to pursue a program, the collaborative design program there at Kendall. And it allowed me a platform to both kind of dig pretty deep in my curiosities, but also hone my skill as a designer and as a design thinker, and to then apply it to my profession that I've kind of fallen in love with. So from there, I think it landed me lots of opportunities.
Uh-oh, we lost you, Matt.
With finding a job, but
having a degree in a related field kind of provided some opportunities for me that I didn't have before. And so it was just kind of like, there wasn't any strategy behind it. It was just kind of following a passion, following a curiosity, and it's kind
I keep losing you. Are you still there? All right, I'm going to move to another question, and maybe I'll send this question over to Aiman. So Aiman, when you were looking for that job, did you have many challenges, or were you working on dumb luck too?
Yeah, I had a lot of challenges. So it's always a challenge, I think, finding a job. But my job hunting phase ranged from pre-pandemic to post-pandemic, or not post-pandemic, but during the pandemic. So I had both experience of trying to find a job right before the pandemic started and into the pandemic. And so my challenge finding a job pre-pandemic was that I faced a lack of response. Getting responses was pretty hard. And once the pandemic hit, it became even worse. A lot of my interviews were canceled, even whole positions were canceled. For example, I had applied to a position with the state, but because the state had to reallocate a lot of their funding to cover costs of the pandemic, the whole positions were canceled. So that was a big challenge. So over the 5-month job search that I did, I applied to 160 jobs, and I had an overall response rate of about 22%. So pretty low response rate. I ended up receiving 10 interviews and 4 job offers. So it is possible to get a job during the pandemic, but you do have to navigate that and how many jobs you end up applying for, because 160 jobs is quite a lot of applications and keeping track all of that. So you have to navigate how to keep track of all of that. And what I did to navigate that is I created a system to track all of my applications. I just used Excel, and I input every single application that every single job I applied for, and some information about the job. So the position, the company, the date that they want me to start, if I followed up or not, if I got a response or not, if I got the interview or not. And just that basic kind of information, that helps you keep track of the jobs that you're applying for. And then you can see, oh, okay, I need to follow up with these people. It's been a while, or things like that. So I found that really helpful.
How did you keep your sense of humor? It's hard work. It's hard work just to keep your frame of mind positive. So how did you work on that?
Yeah, I think it's kind of the fake it till you make it kind of attitude. I would lose confidence every time I would get rejected from a position, but I just, I tried to say that wasn't the right fit for me. That wasn't meant to be.
Sure.
And I moved on. And I think that when it is the right fit, and both parties are excited about, the opportunity of bringing a new person on board, and also the employer is really excited about you. And I think that, it works out for the best in the end. And I was keeping that faith and that hope that it would.
Good. And you're happy now?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So Matthew says his mic is fixed, but I'm still going to move over to Adam and ask him. So how hard was it to get your job, Adam? Andrew, I'm sorry.
Everyone that I've ever known has called me Adam, so don't feel bad.
That was bad. It was very bad. But how did you wrangle your job?
I kind of made my job, if that makes sense. Farming is one of those things, like, you either do it or you don't do it. So
you're not back on the family farm. You created another farm?
I am back on the family farm, okay. But my mom and dad were raising beef cattle when we came back, and kind of just said, hey guys, I kind of want to farm. And I didn't want anything to do with the beef. I still help them with it a little bit, but started growing veggies, have pasture pigs now. We have 1,200 laying hens. So kind of built that all from the ground up. And
So is it a symbiotic relationship? Do they get along, cows and veggies?
well, I mean, the cows in the winter, we collect their poop and compost it, and then that feeds the vegetables. And then,
Okay.
you know, excess vegetable waste goes to the chickens and the pigs, and the pigs and chickens help with the pasture health. So
There's
they
a
do
bit of
all
a
that.
circularity there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and what we're trying to do is we're going to plant a bunch of perennial trees and berries and nuts and try and just diversify even more. But in terms of finding the job, I'm going to be straight up with you. I'm still not taking a paycheck from the farm personally. So my job on the side, my side gig, is teaching microbiology at the tech college in town. So
Brilliant.
that's, I mean, it's nice because, I mean, I'm growing all my own food, so I save a lot of money. I can eat pretty well.
I will say most of us have a side hustle. Even faculty at other universities have a side hustle, so it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and I mean, teaching on the side is, I mean, it's super fun and rewarding to do, and it lines up really well with the growing season. So that's a big help. But in terms of looking for the job, I guess I kind of fell into the farm in a, like, I kind of procrastinated looking for jobs because I was like, what am I going to do with the soil degree? I could be a soils consultant or something. And I was like, that doesn't sound like fun. So I thought, well, we have land. Anybody else who wants to start a farm, that's the biggest hurdle, is finding it. So I said, well, it's there. I need to use it. Otherwise, it might not be there in 3 years. So
I do appreciate that you started with, it needs to be fun. It needs to bring joy, right?
yeah,
If you're not enjoying what you're doing, please find something else to do. I think life is short, and we all should be finding places where we really are passionate and doing what we really love to do. So thank you for that advice.
Yeah.
Very important. So Matthew, now that you're back on the line, how did you wrangle your great gig?
That's not an entirely exciting story, I would say. So I'm going to answer a different question of how I kept my job.
Okay, you can do that. All right.
How I kept my job through the 2018 or 8 and 9 recession. So,
Okay.
and it kind of led to how I have my current job. But you know, as I mentioned in my intro, I don't know if you could hear it or not, but
We
got most of it. I hope. I was working at an architectural firm, and I'm one of those kind of guys that likes to know what the rules are, so I know how to break them. You know, Pablo Picasso likes to say, you know, learn the rules like you're a pro so you can break them like an artist, right? And so that mentality of knowing all the bits, all the parts of architecture and what goes into producing a set of drawings or a design or even carrying it through construction, I really tried to understand every bit of it. So I didn't intentionally want to be a very specific, you know, one eye-shaped individual, like with a really deep expertise. I really wanted a broad experience. And sustainability, when it came into play within the built environment, was a component of that. And what I loved about it, what I found joy in, and where it kind of sparked my passions, is what it was inherently diverse. It was inherently interdisciplinary. And so I really kind of grabbed that bull by its horn and really wrestled with it and tried to learn as much about it as I could, just as my own kind of self-interest, but also because I think when you're on a team and you're looking for a job, the more touch points you have to the work that's being done, the greater your chances are. So the more specialized you are and the least exposed you are to everything else that happens, I think you don't have as strong as strong of an opportunity to really break the mold or to innovate or to change the status quo, because you really need to know the whole, the whole kit of parts, if you will. And so, kind of going through that experience, surviving the Great Recession, maintaining employment throughout that, that mentality of really kind of being as diverse as possible with my skill sets. It lined me right up with a collaborative design degree. Gail likes to say that they produce T-shaped individuals, people that have a really broad understanding of the world that they live and occupy, but still a really deep dive discipline and speciality into a design focus. And I just think that that's really, really brilliant, and one of the reasons why I joined the program. And so moving into the job I have now, that has served me just tremendously well. And I think it's just, I didn't have Aiman's story of applying for hundreds and hundreds of jobs, although I did apply for probably a few dozen over the years and was soundly rejected every time. But the degree that I received from Kendall was, even though it's a bit serendipitous, was the thing that catapulted me to other opportunities. Before, I was a guy without a degree in a field that didn't really have a whole lot of depth, right? There wasn't a whole lot of, there's sustainable education programs coming out, and sustainable design was maybe a thing, but there wasn't degree programs around the kind of work that I was doing. So, that all just kind of fed into me lining up and being offered a scholarship to getting a degree, to then kind of getting the kind of job that I would want to have into the future.
Well, thanks for the plug, Matthew. But I'm glad it worked out for you. You do have an amazing opportunity where you are. Spend a couple seconds talking about what Catalyst does, because it's a unique thing.
Sure. We're as Gail mentioned in my bio, I like to refer to myself as a restorative design consultant, because I'm not in this position an active designer. I am kind of by training and by heart, but in this role, I don't actively design much. I just consult. But one of my most favorite individuals in this space is Jason McLennan, and he says, he says this often, but he says, if you're not actively choosing regeneration, you are choosing degradation. And what we see in the world is that the outpouring or the result of degradation. So I try to, in every choice that I make, choose regeneration through architecture, through growing of food, through all these different things of how to collaborate with a team. Making active choices intentionally to choose things that would promote or catalyze regeneration. And so the work that we do at the firm is to really take that mentality to architecture and engineering firms and building owners, and how to help them understand how that looks like for the built environment. And so we do lots of work, and I don't really need to get into spending too much time on the details of it, but in a kind of nutshell, as we try to help teams choose regeneration with their architecture.
Which is exactly the response to the question that I'm going to ask the other folks on the panel. So the question is, how and what should students be aware of when they're looking at different employers with sustainability in mind? So you looked at Catalyst from the point of view of teaching and growing regenerative work from an architectural point of view. But if I move that question over to Aiman, how do you think about that from a water perspective? How did you think about your employers and sustainability when you made a choice?
Yeah, sure. So one thing that I want to say is I think a lot of us might relate to doing extensive job searching, especially during the pandemic right now. And it might not, all the pieces might not align perfectly in order to just transition into that new job position, and some of us really need a job, and I completely relate to that. So I want to say something a little bit more broad that's a little bit more applicable to the sustainability field as a whole. So when you are searching for a job, I would highly recommend getting to know your employer and understanding what they're looking for in a candidate. If it's an employer you're extremely excited about, take time on the application. Take each responsibility that's listed in the position description and relate it back to your experience and your skill set. Make sure that you tailor your application that you're applying for. One tip that I found extremely useful is getting through employers' applicant tracking systems is using a lot of the same wording that the position description as the position description on your application, because I often found that we have the experience we need for the position, but we're just not wording it correctly. And that way it doesn't make it past those applicant tracking systems. And also the employer might more easily dismiss it if they're not using an applicant tracking system to help filter out the applications. So I use things like jobscan.co to optimize my application to help me get through those ATS systems. But I would really say is if you're excited about a employer, really get to know them, really understand what their missions are, what their values are, and see if they align with yours. And that's where that's my strongest advice I would give.
I agree. That is an excellent advice. Well done. So Andrew, you might have a different approach. Would you like to give some insights on what to look for when thinking about employers?
Yeah, I think Aiman sure hit it on the head. When you're reading the description, try and key in on those words. If they're saying, regenerative, or they're looking for holistic design or something like that, anything that you can key in on and throw back at them, that's huge. And then in that description or in interviews, it's not just the employer interviewing you, you're also interviewing them in a way. So ask them, try and gauge how open they are to like thinking about, maybe they're a firm that doesn't necessarily think about sustainability or regenerative practices on the forefront. But if you're coming in there and you have these ideas, gauge how open they might be to your ideas. I know you'd be like on the bottom of the pecking order maybe coming in, but that's definitely a big part of it, is seeing not just how you can help them, but how they can help you in a way, because it's a two-way street.
And so while I have you, what trends are you seeing in your particular field that you think students should be aware of?
In terms of farming, I mean, there's so many young people coming into this that it's just, the trend is more and more.
Are they ready? Are they prepared? Because it's wicked hard work.
I wasn't ready and prepared. But
and you grew up in it.
Yeah,
right?
that might help. But I mean, if you're going to try and be a farmer, definitely go work for a season or two, see how people are doing it. See if it's something that you want to do. Like I had said, and you had pointed out, Gail, that there are so many ways to plug into it. Like farmers need people to sell the food. Farmers need people to aggregate, and we need people to design systems for getting the food around. We need data analysts to figure out what the most efficient way of transferring the food. And it's all those different pieces, and finding how you fit into that big puzzle and how you can make the puzzle a little bit better is.
I'm going to put a plug in for the lunch lecture. So we had a lunch lecture by Lindsay Scalera, a community food systems collaboration specialist from Michigan State. It was fascinating. And so if any of you listening in now missed that, grab the recording when it's available. if you're interested in food systems at all, there was a lot of very interesting information about that. Very, very interesting. But there's a lot of reasons why I'm not a farmer. It's very hard work. Thanks for what you do.
Right.
Matt, what are you seeing in the field of regenerative design that you'd like to provide some insight to? Matthew?
You're muted.
Sorry, muted. When thinking about my current arc and my experience in this space, it started off with the sustainability definition of basically doing less bad, of not, doing things in a way that doesn't prohibit future generations from pursuing their own kind of passions or living their best lives, right? But we're at the point now that idea is so out the window. We have so much legacy carbon in the atmosphere that really there's nothing we can do to stop or to improve dramatically, at least initially, our kids' future. So that's where regeneration comes into play, like the active restoration and the setting up of systems so that they don't need constant restoration, self-healing systems that heal themselves in response to stress as a natural default. I mean, these are the definitions of regeneration. And it takes a lot of innovation. It takes a lot of creativity. And to Andrew's point, it takes a lot of folks doing a lot of different things. And so I really try to encourage folks not to limit themselves to titles. If you're interested in sustainability, don't limit yourselves to titles or roles that have sustainability in the title. There are lots of ways to plug into this work and apply a holistic regenerative framework to all the work that needs to get done. There's certainly work that shouldn't get done into the future. And I kind of all default to assume you're not pursuing, careers or opportunities that actively degrade our environments or our opportunities. But that said, I think there's a lot to be said for folks that have other passions that may not have sustainability hardwired into them, but there's still so many different ways to connect that to our interdependent systems that we're all depending on. So kind of with that said, I just think the trend that I'm seeing is really the integration, really the holistic thinking. Circular economies require lots of folks aligned and doing lots of work towards the same goal. And when I started really kind of diving into this work, every architecture firm had a lead AP, had somebody that did lead documentation. And then that has kind of shifted to a more holistic approach that firms take. They still require that speciality, but that speciality has really condensed into firms like Catalyst, where we provide it for a multiple or a variety of firms, and that's our core competency. And so that's an evolution of culture, and I think I see that in other fields as well. So it's really just kind of not turning down or even thinking that you need sustainability or title. If you're interested in this work, there's just so many opportunities for impact beyond just the kind of entry-level sustainability titles or roles that we have on the market.
I do like the thread of systems thinkers, though, that you both have mentioned. Aiman, what would you like to add to the conversation?
Yeah, so I can speak to trends in water resources and in the environmental field in general. So issues of water equity and environmental racism have become real focus centers lately. Climate change is disproportionately impacting communities of color, and these issues are very critical to address and kind of urgent. And so water equity in particular is being discussed a lot in my line of work. And the goal there is to ensure water security, especially in the face of climate change, and to make sure that all people, regardless of financial status, have access to safe and clean drinking water. And these are the types of issues that are, I think, common themes among my line of work and what I'm seeing. And those are the trends in my field right now. Yeah.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And again, a plug for an earlier conversation for those of you who weren't part of it. Monica Lewis Patrick from We the People Detroit was amazing about issues on water in Detroit. Very, very fascinating conversation. So the next question on the list is, what recommendations do you have for current students who will be looking for a job in the environmental or sustainability or a field without those words, but want to practice that kind of living? Matt, what would you like to contribute to that question? You're muted.
Recommendations for students
Who are looking for a job. They're just starting out looking. Maybe internships even. Maybe we have folks in the queue who are just, starting into this path. They haven't really graduated yet.
Yeah, I mean, this may go against the core kind of message of the conference, but I have a teenager. He's going to be going to school in the next few years, and I have a very atypical kind of higher education path as well. And I think internships as a way to kind of test out career pathways before making a $60,000, $120,000 commitment to an institution in a degree program makes a whole heck of a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. Kind of just expose yourself to different opportunities out in the marketplace before, if the opportunity arises, right? So what was great for me as a non-traditional student is I had a whole lot of professional experience before I kind of went into an undergrad program, and that served me pretty well. And I think it brought or allowed me to really engage with specific content with a specific end in mind. That may be a kind of just a point of privilege for my life experiences. But I also wanted to say, like, hustle. I'm in a position where I'm actively hiring folks, not right now, but COVID. But when I'm looking at applicants, I want to see what they're doing, what their passions are, where their drives go, where they're hustling. I think armchair critique is pretty easy. And so I'm just looking for folks that really roll up their sleeves and get busy and trying to make a change in whatever capacity they can, wherever they are. I think we like to factual or romanticize huge, glorious, large impacts, and look to the pioneers, the huge folks that are having just tremendous impacts and making tremendous waves in professions. But that's not how communities change. Community change on these small, very small actions noticed by your neighbors, by your peers, that create monumental change. And I think that's, to me, is the recommendation, is find something and just hustle. Hard work goes a long way.
Yep. So Andrew, what would you like to say about that question?
I think part of it really comes down to when you, and this might sound cheesy, like when you close your eyes and dream at night, how do you see yourself helping the most people? You are not going into a career just to help yourself in a sustainability field. You're doing it out of a love of other people, out of the planet, out of mostly extrinsic things. So when you think about it, think about what really drives you and makes you feel good about what you can do and how your specific skills and passions can fit into that drive. How you can, it's such a complex thing. You don't just wake up one day and be like, I'm going to be a farmer. I'm going to be a consultant. You you build on that all the way through what you're learning, and you're learning about all these different ways that you can help. And sometimes it's just, you make it up as you go, honestly. Like, you're not just going to be one thing your whole life. So figure out where you want to be that can provide, yeah, obviously you need a place to live and sleep and eat. But I mean, whatever you do, just make sure that you're, again, happy doing it and you feel fulfilled and that you feel good going to sleep at night.
Beautiful. Aiman, what would you like to add to that question?
Yeah, so I'd like to say that if you are searching for a job in the sustainability field, I know it's the pandemic, but the sustainability field is still growing, and it hasn't been as hard impacted as other fields. So you're quite lucky that you're in this field right now. Especially if you are, I'm going to put a little plug to people of color. If you're a person of color, please get in the sustainability field. We are so underrepresented. And I'd really, if you need any networking advice, feel free to contact me and find me on LinkedIn. Also, one strategy I would have to say is make sure that you're optimizing your search as to be as wide ranged as possible and to find the jobs that you're really seeking and that you really want. And using different platforms for water resources. Josh's Water Jobs is a really good site to use. If you're really interested in a particular organization, make sure you're going to their website to check their postings because they're not always on job searching platforms. Get on LinkedIn or Twitter. LinkedIn Premium I found to be really helpful. Reach out to your network and let everybody know that you're looking for a job. It really helps. And I know job searching is a really hard process. Don't lose confidence. Don't let the employer know that you're desperate. Just keep cool, keep confident, and even if you have to fake it, just believe that this is what I want, and make sure that you're tailoring your resume and your cover letter, and you follow up, and you'll likely succeed. I found a job during the pandemic again, so there is hope, and just keep that in mind.
Great. We have about 2 minutes left, and I have one question I like to ask everybody when I meet them. So if you could just quickly just run all three of you through this one last question, and then I'll hand this over to Rose. And thank you very much for your kind participation. But I am interested to know, what are you reading? Aiman, you're first.
Ooh, well, so we just had a holiday, Indigenous Peoples Day at work, and that day I was taking some time to read A People's History of the United States.
Thank you very much. Matthew, what are you reading?
How to Be an Anti-Racist.
Very good. And Andrew, what are you reading?
I have about 4 books open on the table next to me. One is Carlos Castaneda, The Teachings of Don Juan. One is the Mycorrhizal Planet by Paul Stamets. No, that was Michael Phillips, sorry. And then I'm also reading Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. Yeah.
Good book.
And I forgot the 4th one. Oh, it's an audiobook.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. I wish for everyone to be lifetime learners. You will have more than one job, I promise. And I thank you all for participating with us today. And Rose, I pass this off to you. What a wonderful conference.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much for taking that time. And that is a fantastic question. I love that. And I love that all of you are reading such awesome things right now. So thank you all for participating in this. And thank you to all of our speakers all day long for participating in the Earth Day 50.5. And it has been a very, very educational and inspiring day, at least from my point of view. I hope everybody else was educated and inspired as well. Thank you so much to the Michigan Campus Sustainability Collective and all of our members for helping put this together and helping distribute it to all of our networks. All of the different sessions today will be or have been recorded and will be distributed to everybody who was registered throughout the day. So please feel free to share those far and wide. Like I said, everything was very educational and really exciting. So I hope that we can share that with many more people than we're able to tune in today. If anybody has any questions at all about the Michigan Campus Sustainability Collective, about Earth Day 50.5 today, about Michigan Sustainable Business Forum, please don't hesitate to contact me. And one last and final plug, we do have discounted student and professional memberships to get involved with the Michigan Sustainable Business Forum and with our work with campuses and around sustainability around the state. So thank you all so much for tuning in, and I hope everybody has a wonderful evening. And as always, go vote, and thank you so much.